ah, en nuestro sistema y también mejorar entonces los resultados, no solo para mejorar pocos, pero muchos. Y además esta declaración acerca de la equidad y a través del el plan, la planeación del presupuesto, a tener suficiente consideración a y tener, cuando podamos tomar las decisiones que podemos ser aprobadas y tengan que ver con nuestro presupuesto. También podemos esperar de que la ciudad pueda tener consideración en esto, pero también nos importa todo lo que tenga la comunidad que decir y toda la declaración que tiene la comunidad y sus opiniones. Aparte de ser una organización de equidades, como pensamos en nuestras inversiones. Hemos hecho mucho como sistemas y necesitamos pensar estratégicamente cuáles son en lo que estamos invirtiendo, porque al final tiene que estar conectado para resultados para los niños. Mirando de que ahora podemos mover estas decisiones para los niños con métricas tanto académicas como no académicas. Y muchas de las personas que piensan en estos resultados inmediatos es pensar, por ejemplo, en las pruebas estandarizadas, qué tanto soporte o crecimiento tienen los estudiantes, qué tanto acceso tienen a pasantías para poder acceder a la universidad. Lo que tradicionalmente las pruebas estandarizadas o los MCAS son importantes, pero es solo una parte del éxito de aquellos estudiantes y de aquellos que están progresando en el camino correcto. Al final del día, cuando hacemos estas inversiones, esto tiene que resultar en resultados para los estudiantes. Hemos establecido 4 prioridades como sistema en los últimos 4 años, los últimos años, y habla acerca de nuestra evolución del plan estratégico que ha sido desarrollado en el 2017. Esto fue la versión 2.0 y que ha durado este año. Estamos comprometidos de poner los mejores líderes y maestros enfrente de nuestros niños y cuando digo esto, hablo acerca de todos los educadores, a todas las personas que están en los servicios de la comida, en los que están en la limpieza y el mantenimiento. Todos ellos tienen un lugar y una posición en la educación de estos niños y ayudan que esto sea posible. Si es que todos ellos trabajan con nuestros niños y también los dos es que queremos tener entonces estudiantes que hayan crecido mucho más y creo que en los últimos 2 años hemos sido más exitosos en esta área. Tenemos opciones por secundarias para las matrículas, tenemos opciones para la escuela superior. Creo que tenemos que continuar siendo fuertes para nuestros estudiantes en el momento en que se unen a nosotros y que están preparados para tener entonces las opciones en la universidad y también en la fuerza de trabajo. Número 3, obviamente ha sido elevado a través de la pandemia y necesitamos entonces asegurarnos de que estamos satisfaciendo las necesidades sociales y emocionales de nuestros estudiantes y nuestras familias. La pandemia ha expuesto mucho de estos traumas de los jóvenes, el trauma de haber estado encerrado y lejos de sus compañeros y la poca participación que tuvieron los estudiantes durante la pandemia. Esto ha sido obviamente un impacto bastante grande en nuestros estudiantes y creo que era de esperarse si es que estábamos teniendo este apoyo para los niños y para sus familias, asegurarnos de que puedan asegurar apoyos de salud mental en los cuales estamos experimentando líneas de espera bastante extensas y largas. Así es que obviamente todas las familias y todos hemos estado afectados por los eventos de los últimos años. Si es que tenemos que asegurarnos de que estos soportes y estos apoyos, sistemas de apoyo existan en nuestras escuelas. Y el cuarto, necesitamos estrategia y responsabilidad. Necesitamos asegurarnos de que nuestros sistemas son eficientes y que sean y que se puedan proveer de una forma más fluida y que podamos proveer la mejor experiencia que puede tener cualquier niño en una escuela. Ah, si es que estamos tratando de hemos hecho mucho progreso, pero aún así tenemos muchas cosas que hacer como organización. Cada una de esas cuatro prioridades están un poco más divididas en más detalles. No la voy a leer para ustedes, pero es una serie de 12 iniciativas que han sido relacionadas a las prioridades que acabo de mencionar. Muchos de esos son los de maestros para los líderes, excelencia académica, sistemas de apoyo para la familia, aprendizaje social, emocional y sistemas estratégicos y de responsabilidad. Como ustedes pueden ver, tenemos cada uno de estos cuadros hechos para nosotros mismos para poder alcanzarlos. Bastante estamos tratando de alcanzar, pero sí pienso que no he construido el plan estratégico que ha existido. Oso también toma en cuenta el momento y el tiempo que ha sido bastante de reto y bastante difícil. Y algo que había escuchado mucho cuando empecé es que ah, cuando hicimos estos foros presupuestarios, se crearon algunos equipos para poder entonces crear esta estrategia y estas prioridades. Como lo dije anteriormente, vamos entonces a mirar nuestras iniciativas con una serie de resultados. Yo creo que se ve un poco pequeño, pero tenemos una serie de métricas que podemos entonces mover entonces la aguja en una dirección un poco más positiva a la diversidad de nuestro personal y de nuestra fuerza de trabajo. Creo que no sabemos un poco acerca de los números todo este año. Estamos viendo cuántas personas estamos reteniendo para que vengan a nuestras escuelas. Estamos viendo también los datos de los MCAS, cuáles crecimientos han sido aquellos números de graduación y que se han salido de esto, estemos a saber si estamos haciendo progresos o no. Esto es el trabajo más importante que tenemos y es lo que nos define como distrito. Este proceso para la mejora tiene que estar conectado bastante cercano al presupuesto. No creo que en todos los sistemas hagan esto. ah, Mejor, estamos tratando de mejorarlo. Muchos de este proceso es como un proceso de crecimiento y mejora continua. Y estas conversaciones tienen que tenerse acerca de los recursos y los presupuestos. Estamos en el verano a poner un nivel de distrito y como nivel escolar. Algunas escuelas ayudan a alinear este plan en el distrito como prioridades de progreso o en su falta de progreso. Creo que es bastante importante ya que este plan y el distrito escolar y las escuelas planean y planean en algo que deben hacer, de monitorear todo el progreso en cualquier momento. Queremos que las escuelas sean un poco más independientes y que tengan
uh, for the upcoming school year. And so that was the catalyst discussions for this year. And about where to reinvest, what trades they needed to be made. Bodies, it's not about adding more dollars necessarily, trade-offs around where your school is, where your school may need extra support, and shifting dollars into those places from areas that maybe you don't need the same support. And that can change from year to year. It can change within a school year. So we're trying to set the routine test of school improvement and resource allocation. This gives you a monthly look at this. You can see when school improvement plans and district improvement plans were developed. We had our step backs. They actually occurred in January around what the data that they had in the mid-year. And then as you can see, we essentially launched planning for next year, for the upcoming school year in January. So for them to start planning for the changes that they needed to be made, how to best improve by reallocating people, time, technology, and dollars. And that is where your budget priorities begin to emerge. I just want to point out, this is far from perfect. Again, it's imperfect as a system. We're building that muscle. It's got to be more transparent. We want to include more people in these conversations. And we also think we can be a lot more. Schools does have, relative to a lot of other districts, a lot of resources in our schools. And it's something, and it's a luxury. I would say it's a necessity. I think we need to continue to think differently about how we can use them to accelerate impact for student experience, because that we allocate to our schools. I'll turn it over now to Assistant Superintendent who's going to take us through the budget to our funding for this upcoming school year.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Schreck. We start our conversations about budget and the budget process with kind of where we ground our conversations, and so all of them even more like budget agreements, and it would be that's so connected to the school improvement and district improvement planning. Identify what are the needs of our students, how do we prioritize those needs, and how do we make sure that the dollars that we allocate are aligned to those priorities. And so those are exactly the types of commitments that you see here, using data and evidence that was provided during those step backs to show exactly how are students doing using the metrics that we want to use, how are we as a district doing with the metrics, and being able to say wherever we are clearly needing more support, that's where we want to target those dollars. And we are more transparent about doing that by showing the data and telling the story of what we're asking for. And this is what we hope to address through those investments, and to make sure that those investments are allocated equitably across the district, and to make sure that they're targeted towards the highest needs. We obviously want to invest our dollars in student outcomes and student success. And also invest in the capacity of our and diverse student population. And finally, make sure that we're investing appropriately in the conditions for make sure that our buildings are to the teaching and learning, but actually help to elevate the teaching and learning environment. Some of the budget chart, things that we look at as factors that will help us understand what kind of dollars we may invest. And enrollment in Salem is declining. It continues to decline. That is a trend that started about a decade ago. This past year, for the current year, October, also saw some significant increases in certain populations of students, including low-income students, and on resources and how we use resources. We tracked last year with our STU and our paras. Our two of our largest are that increase alone to fund those % overall. We are continuing to need to address COVID-related challenges for students. They be learned. That is part of maintenance, and to shift our response from more of a reactive to a proactive maintenance. We need to address any inequities that we see, and as we've said a couple times now, we're very excited that we source requests and are aligned to our budget. That is the amount of money that the state says that we need to be able to provide an adequate education to students. That establishes what's known as Salem's required net school spending. That's that spend. We historically, however, have spent a lot more than what the foundation budget allocates to us. And you can see that in the blue line. And you can see that that gap has been increasing over time as we invest more than what the foundation budget would say we would need to educate our children. Demographics of students, and so obviously more investments necessary to meet those needs. A lot of those additional dollars do come from federal and state grants, just found it. The orange bars I want to draw your attention to, because that's our state aid, also known as Chapter 70 aid. That's how much money we get each year. And you can see it sort of as a percentage of the foundation budget. That number has really moved. And in fact, for next year, the projection is that our state aid will only increase by 0.5%, actually just under 0.5%. We get about $25 million of funding in state aid. So that's a significant proportion here is that that Chapter 70 aid is starting to level off, and we're not seeing the increases. So we have a foundation budget that's increasing by 4.6%, but state aid is only increasing by 0.5%. So, and that's obviously that's a challenge. Go to the next slide. You may have heard about the Student Opportunity Act, and Salem, I think, was very excited that the Student Opportunity Act was likely to bring significant increase in the act to specific low-income students and our multilingual learners. Analysis of all of the gateway districts and a foundation budget that is paid for by the state. And over the last 3 years, and you had said those bars looked like they were very level. In actuality, that our share of the amount that the state is paying for Salem has plummeted by 10 bar foundation budget from the state. And for FY23, that proposal drops us at about 30%. And so that's significant. So even though we know we have a needy population, the Student Opportunity Act, plays out in the foundation budget, and it says, yes, Salem, you must spend more money on these children. Even though you have fewer children, you have more needy children. And unfortunately, though, you are too wealthy to receive any significant increase in the contribution from the state. So it's a complicated formula. I won't go into detail, but because of the perception of high property values and high median incomes, it's sees as being a budget than what Salem really is able to afford. And I guess I'll let the superintendent comment on sort of efforts underway.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. The mayor is very concerned about this, and rightfully so. I mean, a lot of these conversations had started prior to the pandemic. Salem realized that it was not and then the pandemic hit. There was a change of superintendent. Last year there was no additional Student Opportunity Act funding, and then and now we, rearing its ugly head in terms of the we're the only gateway city that really is, even though many of the cities are declining in enrollment like ours, we're the only one that's really receiving minuscule amounts of funding. I think it's about $127,000, which is nothing when you have teachers, and we need will fall. We don't think that's just, given that the city of Salem serves such a needy population, both in terms of low income and high needs students. So it is something, there's a lot of advocacy happening right now. And where legislation leaders will see this as a concern, but it's not just a concern for next fiscal year, as the burden shifts more and more on the city. And frankly, it's not like Salem is, while we do maybe have a little bit more means as a city than some of these other communities. I don't know if you just mentioned, I know you're in the middle generally across the state in terms of
They're in terms of their property on a
values,
per capita basis, they're in the middle of the pack. But when you aggregate it,
right.
It makes us seem very wealthy.
So stay tuned as we continue to advocate for this is obviously of grave concern to us.
And here, this pie chart shows you how the foundation budget allocates funding. So the foundation budget basically is based on per student rates. And so it looks at our enrollment across all these various categories. What is our enrollment in high school, middle school, elementary school? What is our Chapter 74 enrollment? And it allocates dollars based on that enrollment. So you can see that the majority of it is the students who are in our PK through 12 or K through 12. There's also a very small preschool piece. As we expand our preschool, that number hopefully will get larger, but you can also see that a significant amount of dollars come to us because of our percentage of low income students. And I think that's all I'd say about that.
I guess I could take this part, Mary. So just, we added this from our last meeting because we realized we hadn't told people, what was coming up. And so we have installed school from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We have a series of finance, head of the finance committee is in the audience, Ms. Manning, and we're meeting next week on April 4th and April 6th. Review input that was to the school committee on Monday, April 25th. We will have a public budget hearing, which is required by law, on Monday, May 2nd. And then the final vote, if all goes according to plan, would be by Monday, May 16th. And then eventually the city council will meet on the budget. And that's at a to be determined date, probably sometime in June or late May, early June, that will happen. So that as we move into like the feedback portion of this conversation, last year we shared a series of budget priorities with the community. We asked them to weigh in and see whether, to help us prioritize, I should say, where sort of the order of importance. And in the end, we were actually, we recently this assessment, we actually were able to fund quite a bit more things that we've started, saying they're through completion or their comp day has gone into the areas in green. When I looked at it, I was a little surprised that it was so many of the items from ESSER, from grant funds, from COVID funds. We also did allocating to fund some of these of this work, but really these investments have been made. Some of these investments public may not think are the right ones, and we want to hear that from people, whether they think, hey, yeah, press on, push forward, go deeper, or no, you know what, we don't think that this is necessary, and you probably should divert those somewhere else. We want to hear from you. The ones in blue, like hiring a full-time recruitment specialist, that's partially invested in. Some of our work with our data systems, there's been partial investment. And then the items in red are things that we just have not we have not invested in yet. We thought they were, maybe they're not anymore. And we also know there's a lot of, who we think people may weigh in now. We wanted to at least show you what we had put out there last year, what we thought we had already invested in, what we still had work to do, and then what are the things that we still had not yet allocated enough resources to. So this is an opportunity for folks. So moving on to the next slide, we're going to open up the floor first to questions, and then we want to have a discussion about the investment priorities. What should we continue or expand doing? Again, what should we just stop doing? It's not worth the investment. And then is there anything that we are missing or overlook or have overlooked in some of these investments? Like what else is missing? What are you seeing now that our kids are back after the pandemic, and that you want us to consider as part of the budget process? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I guess with the Q&A feature, any aspect of the presentation before we go to input, that would be great. If anybody has any questions of anything I shared or that Mr. Lai shared, please put those into the chat at this time. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else, Mary, that as we're waiting, if there's any Q questions.
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't see questions, I'm going to re-share. Let me just see. So I'm going to put up this slide here. And so we really want to know, like, what should we double down on? What should we stop doing? And what's missing? And we're going to record any responses we get. I wish we could be in person to have this conversation, but, and we will next week. I don't see any questions yet, or I don't see any comments yet from anybody. Chelsea, I don't think we can share, right, the document with them. Probably not in this.
No, if they want to put their emails in the chat, I'm happy in the questions. I'm happy to send it to them, or a follow-up feedback form if they would feel more comfortable sharing offline. But at the moment, we don't have any way of messaging out.
Yeah. Okay, they're all on the other side. Okay. I don't see any yet. We can exercise wait time, and that's fine. If nobody,
Can I ask, or can I put forward one that might be helpful for upcoming budget presentations? There was a question in our earlier staff panel around school choice, that we had increased the access to school choice, and just a question had come up about what happened this year and how are our numbers. And so I just wonder if it's numbers that you have, you could offer those. Otherwise, it was just a curiosity that I couldn't.
Yes, we actually did seen some increasing school choice revenues coming in as a result of more student being choiced in. I think last year we might have been, $300,000, and this year over $400,000. So we are seeing those revenues. And we have had conversations about how we can utilize those resources in a sustainable way. It's hard to know, like, will those trends continue, but how can we use them merged through these conversations?
Thank you, Mary.
Keep the numbers up, but there has been a significant increase in school choice, which has been, as Mary said, has been very helpful. And I think we're doing a bit of tracking down people who have had changes. And that's definitely been development, I would say, in terms of some additional revenue. I mean, and I think it's precisely since 2011 to 2021, there were 400 fewer births. There's the birth rate has gone down significantly over the last 10 years. And then we also think in general that the school age more and more families are and moving out. A lot of that has to do with housing costs. It's not just about students choosing to leave. In some of the charter members, the school choice out of Salem decline in kids going to private school in our annual report. So it just speaks to a decline in overall, children living in this city over the last, few years. And that, that's a factor for sure, but it certainly is not the only factor. Mary said, there's a lot of communities, gateway cities, who have declining enrollment that are seeing a lot more resources come their way from a percentage standpoint than we are. So. All right, this is a group, not a very chatty group at all, but that I guess it comes with the territory, given that we're on the other side of the wall. I guess what I would encourage is if you could try to send people to come to our session next week, that would be great in person, where we'll be able to have more of an exchange. We don't get infiltrated by Zoom bombers. We look forward to having an in-person conversation with folks next week on Tuesday from 6:30 to 8 at Saltonstall School. I don't know if there's anything else that people want to chime in on. Okay. Well, this went a little quicker than we thought. We're going to distribute this to our staff and families as well. And perhaps we'll be able to put the recording online for people to see as well. So we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us, making us a part of your evening. We appreciate that. And we will see you soon. Have a great night, everybody.